NASCAR heads to Talladega this week. Not going to be able to predict who's going to do well here. It's the home of the big one. Always the big wreck at Talladega. Corey Parsons' favorite track. And don't forget to go to RotoExperts.com and check out Dan Dobish's preview. And to preview Talladega, as always, the father and son fantasy NASCAR segment every Friday. I welcome in Sean Engel. And Sean, before we get to Talladega, this week was Austin Dillon's birthday. So when do you think our friend Austin is going to get his first birthday present? What is the best track that you think that maybe he might have the best odds to win at this season and get his first Sprint Cup victory?
Well, before I actually go and answer this question, I need it specified. Are you talking about the track he would love to win at the most, or the track he has the best chance of winning at?
The track he has the best chance of winning at.
Right now, I feel like it is going to be either Daytona or Talladega due to his past performances, although he's been improving at other tracks too.
So do we have a shot to maybe see Austin Dillon in victory lane this week?
Yeah, we do have a shot, but we also do have a shot for 39 other drivers to be in victory lane as well.
Well, probably not Reed Sorensen, I would think. Or I don't know if Jeffrey Earnhardt's in the field, so maybe we better say about 30 or so, because there's a bunch of guys at the back of the pack we know just won't win. I know we always used to joke about this. If Joe Nemechek was still in the field, he wouldn't have a chance of winning, right?
True, we still call him Back Row Joe.
Yes, even though he's not racing. We need him to come back and bring up the rear. Before we get into Talladega here, every Friday when we preview races, we're doing it before qualifying and practices, Sean. And sometimes you use average finish in your analysis, but you have to really check what happens after qualifying and practices. This is our first look at the field, so sometimes average finish gives you a good look at the field prior to the race, but it becomes less important after qualifying and practices, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Like you said, before qualifying and practice, average finish is a pretty good benchmark to see how well a driver generally does at a track. It shows how well a driver has done in the past, but you don't fully know the outlook of a driver before qualifying or practice. But really, though, based on past history, you can tell about how some drivers usually stick with some of their setups. Like Dale Earnhardt Jr., for example, at Talladega and Daytona, he has a specific car setup that he likes that usually goes towards his liking. And as a result, he's had a very good history at these types of tracks. And that's what average finish kind of can give you in that sort of analysis and that sort of detailing. And it's most important before qualifying and practices, because the fact of the matter is that it helps give a bit of an overview of what you might possibly expect. But that doesn't mean it always does for sure. Because, well, you want to talk about after qualifying and practices, right?
Well, let's get into some of the drivers now, though. I think that was a really good way to explain it. Junior's 10,300. He seems like the lock because of his restrictor plate history. But, with Talladega, this restrictor plate racing, your whole DraftKings lineup can go to pot at any time because anybody can wreck. You got to lock in Junior, but nobody is really surefire because of this track.
Well, first of all, for those of there out there listening that don't know about the big one, it is a crash that takes out a lot of the NASCAR field and completely changes the results. So, because there's probably even some people listening out there that might not even know what the big one is and entering fantasy NASCAR for the first time. So it's good to know what that is before going into Talladega. It's very unpredictable when it comes, and it can take out anybody. And for any drivers involved, it will completely ruin your day. Like any fantasy teams that have any one of their drivers that happen to be involved in the big one, it could kiss their days from winning all the way to being very far down in a contest or a tournament.
Have you been more aggravated?
Actually, you go first.
Yeah, sorry. Have you been more aggravated at Talladega than any other track when playing fantasy NASCAR?
It can be aggravating and annoying, yes. It really can be.
All right, let's get into some drivers. You got to lock in Junior, but Jimmie Johnson's only 9,800, and Kevin Harvick's only 9,400 this week.
So, okay, I guess I'm going to talk about Junior first. He is a six-time Talladega winner, but apart from that, he's also got some really good stats backing him up, and talking about the reasons why he's a bit more of a lock at this track. He has the highest percentage of laps led of all active drivers with 11.2%. He also has the highest percentage of laps in the top 15 with 63.8%. And his average running position is 13.6. He even has the fastest average green flag speed in the series with 193.641 miles per hour. As a result, he's looking very good already, and I feel like we all have been saying, he's a bit of a lock for this track. He's really good, and all these stats do prove it. As for Kevin Harvick, he has only one win, but interesting enough, despite starting 30 times, he's only had 2 DNFs. He even has an average finish of 15.773, which is third best in the Sprint Cup Series, and he has an overall pass differential of 287. So I think Harvick is also a very strong pick for this track, too, because, like I said, only 2 DNFs in 30 starts, that's very good. One of the important fundamentals about Talladega is having a driver that will at least finish the race. It's a good way in order to maintain a strong fantasy team and get a lot of fantasy points this week. And picking a driver that knows how to avoid the big one like Kevin Harvick, I think that's an important key for this race this week.
Now, what about the Busch Brothers? Kyle's 9,200 and Kurt is 8,800. And can you also touch quickly on Jimmie Johnson?
Well, Kyle Busch, he has one win, but he's also got 94 fastest laps, which is fourth most in the series. He even has a positive pass differential of 119 in all races and an average running position of 19.427, but that's only 18th best in the series. Among other stats, he always hasn't been the best when it comes to Talladega. So, I mean, especially when you look at other options around that range, Kyle Busch is definitely not my first pick when it comes to mine for his track. As for his brother Kurt, he's one of the best picks you can get for this track as well. He spent 63.7% of laps ran in the top 15, which is second only to Dale Earnhardt Jr. He also has 5,994 quality passes, which is the most in the series, on top of 8,768 green flag passes, which is the most in the series. He also finished in the top 10 in half of his starts, too. So, I mean, I like Kurt Busch's value. He's in a pretty good spot, too. Now, Jimmie Johnson, like you said, 2-time Talladega winner, average finish position of 10th in the last 3 spring races, which is second best, fourth highest percentage of laps in the top 15, fourth most quality passes. And you know what? For Jimmie Johnson, I think it depends on where he starts in his practice speeds a bit more so than the others, because his salary is a little bit on the higher side, especially when there's other options like Matt Kenseth and Brad Keselowski who are cheaper and have seen more success this track.
Joey Logano's 9,600. Also keep an eye on him. Daytona 500 winner. If I had to ask you, who are the 2 top drivers that you would most advise locking in your lineup early, who would they be? Would it be Junior and who else?
It would be Junior and Kurt Busch. They have shown recently that they are the 2 best drivers at this track based on past stats. I mean, and a lot of the stats such as like running position or even laps led or percentage of laps in the top 15, these 2 drivers lead in most of the categories in terms of stats and loop data. And on top of that, Kurt Busch is at a pretty good salary price for all the stats and potential he has at this track. That's pretty much what I think is going to be best for this week.
Okay, real quick, Sean. We don't have too much time to get to some of the value drivers. What about Trevor Bayne, 6,500, David Gilliland, 6,200? Then you got Landon Castle at 5,800 and even David Gilliland at 5,200, who were some of the top value plays very quickly.
Now, Trevor Bayne, I probably would not use him. He has an average finish of 28.5, and despite his value being moderately low, he's only finished higher where he started in only 2 starts. So I probably would not use him. As for, you said Ricky Stenhouse Jr.?
Gilliland, Castle, and Stenhouse Jr.
Okay.
Very
so
quick.
Gilliland, he has an extremely low salary and average running position of 24.584. He even has 60 spots gained in the last 10% of Talladega races. I would most certainly use him. And Landon Castle, I would also really use him because he has an overall place differential of +9 at Talladega and an average spot gain of 5.2 in the last 10% of Talladega races, which is best in the series.
All right, Sean Engel, thank you very much. We'll look forward to talking to you next week.